And the second one evolves around talent acquisition trends. Now, regular listeners of the podcast know that I like to throw in a predicted trend every now and then to see whether or not that prediction was correct. And this episode is no exception. So in a KornFerry article about talent acquisition trends for 2024, the company mentions early career hiring as one of the trends to watch out for this year. Let me elaborate. According to KornFerry, larger employers will try and charm candidates while they are still in high school, and others will search for hires in technical and non-traditional higher education institutions. There appear to be a couple of reasons for this. Finance, as usual, plays a part. Entry-level hires require lower salaries than their more qualified counterparts, which makes them especially attractive when budgets are tight. Other reasons include finding new ideas and building an inclusive business. The idea here is that the wider the talent pool, the easier it will be for organizations to hit DE&I goals. At the same time, young hires have their expectations too. They expect more from employers, more inclusion, more compassion, more balance. KornFerry sees a bigger call now for more empathy, emotional intelligence, and a focus on mental health at work than ever before. The company believes it is on employers to step up and support their people in that regard. Nevertheless, the company believes that companies will be doubling down on early career hiring this year. With 2024 already being in its second half when we record this podcast, we should be able to determine whether or not this is indeed the case. So here goes for the statement. 2024 is the year in which early career hiring overtakes campus recruitment. All right. So for this statement, Francois, I'll start with you. So this is a year in which early career hiring overtakes campus recruitment. That was a trend predicted for 2024. Do you agree with that or not?
I am leaning into a no for this statement.
All right. Bram, what is your opinion on this?
It's going to be interesting because I'm leaning into a yes.
Oh.
Wow. All right. Francois, let's hear it from you first.
Yeah, so the reason I'm thinking that maybe early career hiring won't overtake campus recruitment, there might be multiple reasons. In your statement, you mentioned the finance perspective. I think that from a finance perspective, it's still cheaper to hire, from a campus perspective, like interns and apprentices, than junior permanent profiles. And what I've been witnessing for the past 2 years, the interest rates being very high, companies having difficulties to find funds to fund their growth, they often rely on more junior profiles because they are less expensive. But what is less expensive than a junior permanent profile is an intern. And I've seen, especially in our field in talent acquisition, lots of junior talent acquisition roles being transformed into interns or apprentices. And so I think the companies from a financial standpoint will have more incentive to do campus recruitment than just hire someone who has 2 or 3 years of experience. That would be, I think, an early career hiring, as it's raised in the statement. So that's one thing. I think one of the reasons it's the finance perspective. The other reason, I think, is that I've been working with hiring managers a lot those past 2 years when, the financial context was a bit difficult. And from the business perspective, they often prefer to wait till they have a green light from finance to open the role than hiring a profile that is not fitted to their real business need, meaning hiring someone who is more junior than what they would expect. Let's say they want to hire someone who has 10 plus years of experience, but they only have the budget to hire someone who's just graduated, just out of school. So what do? Well, from the experience that I had those past 18 to 24 months, they mostly wait. They are not rushing into recruiting junior profiles. And if they recruit junior profiles, they will tend to do campus recruitment, meaning hiring interns, because it's a temp situation. And 6 to 12 months later, they have a new budget line, maybe to hire the senior profiles that they needed in the first place. So it's a mix between a finance perspective and a business perspective. But from the experience I had those past 18, 24 months, I'm more leaning into a no on this very specific statement.
Interesting.
Nevertheless, I'm super interested to know the perspective from Bram, who seems to be leaning into a yes. So I'm really curious about that.
Yes.
Well, I can elaborate on that, Francois. I don't know if 2024 is going to be the year, but eventually early career hiring is going to overtake campus recruitment. And the reason I think that is because of I think it's mostly part in Western Europe when we look at the demograph of the people, we see that it's getting harder and harder to get good graduates, get good apprentices, get good trainees, get good interns, because we see the number of applicants to high schools and universities declining. So that also means that our talent pool is getting smaller and smaller. So when we used to have a high budget for campus recruitment in high schools and universities, we're going to allocate those budgets even earlier to get those hires because we're all fishing in the same pond. So that's the reason we're going to look at early recruiting and start to look at high schools. For instance, there are examples here in the Netherlands that some of the big banks are even taking or doing money lessons in primary schools, and it's part of a social educational project, but it's branded. So I think in that aspect, yeah, early career hiring is going to overtake campus recruitment. And the main reason is that, yeah, we need to take a look at our demographics here in Western Europe and yeah, fishing in the same pond.
Ah, interesting. Well, I didn't know that they were already doing this even in, what did you now say that they were even sometimes looking now at primary schools?
Yeah, exactly. I think people in grade 2 or 3 or something, and when you start first using, like, when you get your first allowances, and the kids get like lessons from big banks here in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I did not know that. Also
and
interesting.
it's not that big branded, but yeah, eventually you see the name below of the bank who does the education. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I have a lot of questions about that, but but I guess that's also something for a different debate. Interesting, though, what you're saying about the fact that when you look at the demographics, that everybody is fishing in the same pond, and you do need to look at different sources to get potential hires from. That's an interesting one. Also interesting to see that there's differences between various countries, because what I'm hearing from Francois on the one hand and from you on the other hand, so there are some differences there. So nice. Francois, was there anything you wanted to add about this?
I subscribe to what Bram just said about companies getting involved in the kids' minds very early. We are a gaming company. I'm currently working for a gaming company, and we do mobile applications to teach kids how to code. So obviously it's for educational purpose. So it's broader than just for our company. It's for all kids around the world to learn how to code. But because that's us who are producing the mobile app, the game, because it's basically a game, it might have a positive return on investment for ourselves as a potential employer in the future. The thing is, how do you track this return on investment 15 years later? Like, you have a kid who's 5 years old and he starts coding with a mobile app, and maybe when he's 20, he applies to the company. It might be an option, it might be possible, but how do you track it in terms of investment, of employer brand investments? It's very difficult to track. The thing is, working in a gaming company that has been producing games for more than 30 years, we sometimes hire people that used to be players of our games more than 20 years ago. They have been a fanatic of the IPs that we've been working on those past few years, and 20 years later, it's like a dream come true when they join our company. So we know it's possible, but how do you track this kind of positive side effect of just doing your job producing games? You don't really track it. It's more of a very non-material feeling that you have, that you're exhausting someone's dream years later. That's more of the Bram's opinion made me think about that. So yeah, absolutely. I think we are kind of on the same page. Like, you say yes, I say no, but in the end we agree on the most important things.
Yeah, and it's hard to track, but I think in general, when you take a look at recruiting, it's getting more and more kind of a marketing kind of feel. So when you look at you have the big marketing model, I believe the AIDA model, when you first look at attention, and I think that's one of the main reasons. Like Francois said, you got to do the coding app just to give them a feel, just just to get in the minds. And of course, and it's also with the banks, it's a social part that they wanted, and but after that, yeah, that's also one thing, they're in the minds of the kids, and
Yeah.
maybe, and it's hard to track, but after 50, 20 or 25 years, yeah, it could be a good employee for your company.
Yeah, it's part of their ESG or CSR policies or initiatives, and I think that's great. There, some of them are just trying to raise their ESG score for, I don't know, the markets or anything, but some of them really have social policies that are well implemented at a local level to help their communities, etc. So it might have a very positive impact years and years later.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually did. I worked at a lot of accounting firms to do recruiting, and we did guest lectures at high schools to try to convince people to work in accounting. And it's one of the only university studies that you can do with working as well here in the Netherlands, and it's funded by those accountancy organizations. So that after you're 18 and you finish your high school, you can already start working. So yeah,
that's amazing. We've did a bit of tracking, like data tracking, those past few weeks with my team, and we have a campus department that is overseeing lots of different things, and they also oversee what we call the actions. Actions are like the events that we have with the network of schools that we are partnering with. And last year we did 43 different actions. It represents hundreds of hours of work for our employees, our campus team, or recruiters, etc. And an action could be, we go to a school and we manage 8 hours of training for a class of 30 people, let's say, or it could be welcoming 50 people for 2 weeks in our buildings to train them on our tools and make them experience what it's like to produce video games. So it's a very wide and broad range of actions. So 43 different kind of events that we managed past year in the campus team from my team. So it's a very, I think, strategic thing for us on the short term, because every year we recruit interns and apprentices. We recruit around 200, 250 interns every year in my team. So it's a very short-term strategy to hire people, but it's also a very long-term strategy because we partner with a very selected and curated number of schools and special programs inside those schools, and we target very specific students inside those programs. So it gives us positive ROI, not only on the very short term from 6 to 12 months, but also on the very long run, people years later that are applying to our company because they had one teacher that was from our company, or one lesson, or one event, or one opportunity to visit the studios, or anything that is related to us that will attract them to us again in a few years. So it's a long-term game.
Exactly. I worked, my previous assignment was at a large accounting company as well, and we did 70 to 80 events per year with high schools, in-house days, career days, you name it, the guest lectures, just to be seen by the students. And we filled a lot of internships. We filled a lot of what we call them working students. So people who work when they do university study, they work like 10 to 12 hours a week as well. And also apprenticeships, trainees, started as well. But I think on the long term, what Francois said, after 2 or 3 years, we still get people who apply for jobs that mentioned in the interview they had such a good experience at a campus event. And that's, so also for that, the campus recruiter is like the face of the company at high schools, universities, on the campuses. And you can work at a large amount of accounting firms. You can work at a large amount of software companies. So what's the reason you choose? And I think that one of the main reasons is also the person that you meet at one of those events.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Campus recruitment is like one of the best HR jobs you can have, because basically your job is to spend budget to create a massive positive experience for young hires and hope to hire them again in the future. So it's really at the crossroad between HR, project management, events, employer brand, community management, school relationships. It's one of the best jobs you can have in HR. It's a great way to have a positive HR experience.
Exactly, and I think that's also one of the things that I don't get at some companies, that you see like the intern does the campus recruitment part. And I'm like, well, if you have a good intern, that's all okay, but it's such an important part of your total recruitment strategy. So
strongly agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like we are in agreement once again, which is lovely. This was just, to me as an outsider, it was very interesting to listen to both of you and to hear about all these initiatives. And I think what I will take away from this really is that what happens is somewhere in the mind of people in high school or on campuses, there's a little seed that's being planted, right? And then that is what makes those people maybe come back to the company as an employee years later, or maybe sometimes even 20 years later. So I think that's, yeah, that's quite nice to hear.